Okay, continuing on. Worldly building versus life viewpoints. Now in Genesis 4, we have the line of Cain, and in Genesis 5, we have the line of Seth, who replaced Abel. Seth can be viewed as Abel, resurrected from the dead, if you will. But these lines are very different. In Cain's line, there is no mention of the passage of time, which is quite interesting. There is much activity, as we will see. Cain's line is all about building, but no record of lifespan. In Seth's lineage, as we will see in Genesis 5, we don't see a lot of activity from the world's perspective, but we see a meticulous record of time marked by the birth and death of the people in the line. How does God view time? He dwells in eternity. 1,000 years is as a day. Ages can pass in an instant. It's all present with him, and it is all now. Does that mean he is disinterested? No. David said, "Your thoughts toward me, if I could number them, would be more than the sands of the sea." Psalm 139, 17 through 18. God's view of time and its measurement is all about the life of his people before him. Recently, my wife asked how long we have lived in our house. The way I recollected it was to say, well, our son was born 10 years ago, and we were pregnant with him the year after we moved in. I anchored my sense of time by connecting it to something I love. I'm created in the image of God. I'm sure he does the same thing. We would think that when Cain went out from the presence of God, he would have disappeared from the narrative. But this is not the case. The Cains never go away. John said, "They went out from us, showing that they were never of us." 1 John 2:19. And yet he said, "I write these things concerning those who seduce you." 1 John 2:26. They separate themselves and call themselves part of something that you do not belong to, that you are excluded from, and try to seduce you to want to be a part of it. They stick around, but they're not of us. Cain went out and built a city, and his descendants were the pioneers of agriculture, weaponry, entertainment, music, and more. Everything they did was an effort to mitigate the curse and its effects. This is what we call the world system, an attempt to make life palatable and livable. It is associated with Cain. This line is the one that the world recognizes. When the world thinks of its history, it thinks in terms of the world empires. Interestingly, these empires are all rooted in a religion that celebrates the pre-flood days and the line of Cain. Tubal Cain, for instance, is worshipped as a god in Masonry and other world religions. Sorry, my cat at the zoomies and he's trying to get into a box. This is funny, sorry. Mischief, will you please just go away? You're distracting. The major architectural wonders of the world are attributed to him and dedicated to him. The world chooses the line of Cain because that's where we have the mighty works and civilization. But all that building work is just a response to not having God. Amen. They've gone out from the presence of God, and now they have to fend for themselves. There's no mention of the passage of time with them, which I think is significant because God doesn't remember their works or regard them at all. All their work is in vain. It's all going to be burned up. Amen. There's no reason to record their generations, so there's no time. But with the line of life in Genesis 5, it talks about how each person lived for a certain time, then had the next person, and lived for a certain time, then had the next person. Yet there's no mention of anything they did. They didn't build anything. They multiplied, had children, and then passed the blessing, the birthright, and the faith onto their seed. This emphasizes not building and work, but life. Amen. And you know how they say that, who was it? The hyperdispensationalists say that it was all by works and not by faith and everything. And it's interesting how while we're reading Genesis and everything, it's like he was showing that it's nothing is created by your doing, by your works. It's all by my hand, by my life. From the very beginning. I just think that's so cool because it's just God, again, manifesting himself through, yes, it's through time, and seeing the difference between the two. You know, it was life that was produced, and his life that was produced through the line, and not their works. So that's just another, nail in the coffin to those who think that it was faith plus works during the Old Testament. Nah. If you read this and you really look at it and you see it's all about Christ's life through his line. And I just think that's beautiful. So anyway, I just thought that I'd share that. Okay.